December 15th, 2:47 p.m. Maximum security prison visiting room. Every detail of what happened next was captured on security cameras, footage that would later become the most damning evidence in a case that shocked the nation. In a room designed to prevent violence, where every visitor passes through metal detectors and searches, where guards monitor every interaction, the unthinkable occurred in just 4 minutes and 37 seconds. But to understand how a routine prison visit became a crime scene, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when two lives first collided in a way that would ultimately end in tragedy. The year was 2019. A busy downtown Dallas nightclub called Velvet. The kind of place where the music was too loud and the drinks were overpriced, but people came anyway because it was the place to be seen. That's where they first met. A 28-year-old with dreams bigger than Texas itself, and a 32-year-old man whose charm could fill a room, but whose temper could empty it just as quickly. She was working as a makeup artist then, building a clientele among Dallas's social elite. Friends described her as someone who lit up every room, who remembered everyone's birthday, who'd give you her last dollar if you needed it. He was different, intense, passionate, the kind of man who loved hard and fought harder. A construction worker by day, but at night, he moved through the city's underground like he owned it. Their relationship moved fast. Too fast, some friends would later say. Within 3 months, they were living together. Within 6, they were engaged. The wedding photos from their 2020 ceremony show two people who seemed genuinely in love. But photographs only capture moments, not the spaces between them. What do you think? When you hear about relationships that move this quickly, do you see it as romantic or concerning? Let me know in the comments. The first signs of trouble came quietly. A friend noticed bruises hidden under concealer. Another witnessed an argument that left everyone uncomfortable. But love has a way of making excuses, of painting red flags in softer colors. She stayed. She loved him. She believed things would get better. They never did. October 2021. A convenience store in South Dallas. Security footage shows a masked figure entering at 11:43 p.m., weapon drawn. The robbery itself took less than 90 seconds. The arrest came 3 days later, after facial recognition software matched partial footage to a prior arrest record. The trial was swift. Armed robbery with a deadly weapon carries serious time in Texas. 15 years. That was the sentence handed down in March 2022. 15 years in Huntsville's maximum security facility. For many relationships, this would have been the end. But for these two, it was strangely just another chapter. The prison visiting system in Texas allows for weekly visits. Every Sunday, like clockwork, she made the 3-hour drive from Dallas to Huntsville. Other regular visitors began to recognize her, the devoted wife who never missed a week, who always brought photos to share, who waited patiently through the security screenings. But something was changing during those long drives. Away from his constant presence, away from his watchful eyes, she began to discover parts of herself that had been buried for years. It started with therapy, court-mandated sessions that were supposed to help her process the trauma of living with someone who'd committed violent crime. But therapy has a way of opening doors we didn't even know were closed. 2023 marked a turning point. The woman who entered that visiting room each Sunday was evolving in ways her husband couldn't see through the reinforced glass partition. She'd started hormone replacement therapy, began living her truth in every aspect of life, except one. Every Sunday, she'd carefully remove her nail polish, style her hair differently, choose clothes that hid her changing body. The visiting room became a stage where she performed a version of herself that no longer existed. Letters between them from this period, later entered into evidence, show the growing disconnect. His letters spoke of plans for when he got out, of the life they'd rebuild together. Hers became shorter, more distant, filled with talk of work and weather but empty of real emotion. Other wives in the visiting room noticed the changes. One regular visitor later testified that she'd asked about the obvious weight loss, the different way she carried herself. "I'm just trying to be healthier," was the response. But health was only part of the truth. Here's something to consider. How long could you maintain a double life? How long before the weight of that secret became unbearable? Share your thoughts below. By late 2024, the transformation was becoming harder to hide. Hormone therapy had softened her features, changed her body in ways that baggy clothes couldn't completely conceal. She'd legally changed her name, updated all her documents, lived fully as herself everywhere except for those Sunday visits. The strain was showing. Prison mail is monitored, but love finds a way to speak in code. Looking back at their correspondence from fall 2024, investigators found hints everywhere. She wrote about becoming who I was meant to be, and changes you might not understand. He wrote back with increasing frustration about her distance and secrets. One letter, dated November 3, 2024, would later become crucial evidence. In it, he wrote, "I know you're hiding something from me. 15 years is a long time, but I'm still your husband. Whatever it is, we can work through it." Her response, sent a week later, was just 2 lines. "Some changes can't be undone. Some truths can't be untold." She stopped writing after that, but she didn't stop visiting. Every Sunday, she still made that drive. Other visitors later described her as increasingly anxious during those final weeks. One woman remembered her spending longer in the bathroom before entering the visiting area, as if steeling herself for what was to come. Prison psychology experts would later testify about the unique dynamics of incarcerated relationships. When one partner is locked away, they're frozen in time while the world, and their loved ones, continue to evolve. The person they remember, the person they expect to see, may no longer exist. The day started like any other Sunday. Weather records show it was unusually warm for December in Texas, 72 degrees with clear skies. She left Dallas at 9 a.m., stopping once for gas in Corsicana. Security footage from the gas station shows her checking her reflection in the car window, adjusting her clothing, preparing for her performance one last time. She arrived at Huntsville at 12:15 p.m. The visitor log shows she signed in at 12:23 p.m. Security screening was routine: metal detector, bag search, pat-down. Nothing unusual was noted by the guards on duty. She was visitor number 47 that day. The visiting room at Huntsville is a large, sterile space divided by reinforced glass partitions. Inmates sit on one side, visitors on the other, speaking through telephone handsets. It's designed to prevent physical contact, to maintain security, to keep everyone safe. On paper, it works perfectly. She took her usual spot at partition 12. Security footage shows her fidgeting with her hands, avoiding eye contact with other visitors. At 1:47 p.m., the inmates were brought in. He walked to his side of partition 12, picked up the handset, and smiled. For exactly 13 seconds, everything seemed normal. Then his expression changed. What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. Security footage, enhanced and analyzed frame by frame, tells the story without audio. The handsets didn't record conversations. But body language speaks volumes. At 1 hour 47 minutes and 13 seconds, his smile fades. His eyes narrow, studying her face with new intensity. She appears to be speaking rapidly, gesturing with her free hand. Other visitors later reported hearing her say, "Please understand, and I'm still me." At 1 hour 47 minutes and 45 seconds, he stands abruptly, still holding the handset. His mouth is moving rapidly. Witnesses described shouting, though the exact words varied in different testimonies. She remains seated, head bowed, no longer meeting his eyes. At 1 hour 48 minutes and 22 seconds, he slams the handset against the partition. The reinforced glass doesn't break, but the sound echoes through the visiting room. Guards begin moving toward partition 12. This is where the security failures begin to compound. The visiting room that day had 4 guards supervising 47 visitors and 47 inmates, a ratio that prison reform advocates had long criticized as inadequate. The nearest guard was dealing with a minor dispute at partition 3, 20 feet away. At 1 hour 48 minutes and 41 seconds, he vaults over the partition. Stop for a moment and think about that. The partitions at Huntsville are 4 feet high, designed to prevent exactly this scenario. But desperate rage gives people capabilities they shouldn't have. In less than 2 seconds, he was on the visitor's side of the room. What followed was captured in horrifying detail by multiple security cameras. She tried to run but stumbled in the narrow space between partitions. He caught her near the exit door, a door that should have been manned but wasn't, another critical failure that investigators would later highlight. The attack itself lasted 89 seconds. By the time guards reached them, by the time they could separate him from her, it was too late. Other visitors were screaming, running for exits, adding to the chaos that prevented a faster response. At 1 hour 51 minutes and 54 seconds, the first guard reached the scene. At 1 hour 52 minutes and 16 seconds, they had him restrained. At 1 hour 52 minutes and 32 seconds, medical personnel were called. At 1 hour 53 minutes and 47 seconds, she was pronounced dead at the scene. for minutes and 37 seconds from normal visit to murder scene. How do you think this could have been prevented? What security measures failed here? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice launched an immediate investigation. Within hours, every second of security footage was being analyzed, every witness interviewed, every protocol scrutinized. What emerged was a cascade of failures that turned a secure facility into a crime scene. First, the staffing levels. Budget cuts had reduced the visiting room staff from 6 guards to 4. Union representatives had filed complaints about this reduction 3 months before the incident, warning that it created dangerous blind spots. Their warnings went unheeded. Second, the partition height. While 4 feet had been deemed sufficient when the prison was built in 1987, no review had been conducted despite multiple incidents of visitors and inmates attempting to breach the barrier. A 2019 security assessment had actually recommended raising the partitions to 6 feet. The recommendation was shelved due to cost concerns. Third, the emergency response protocol. Guards are trained to respond to disturbances within 30 seconds. On December 15th, it took 71 seconds for the first guard to reach partition 12. Those 41 extra seconds proved fatal. But perhaps the most damning revelation came from reviewing previous incidents. In the past 5 years, there had been 17 minor altercations in the visiting room, pushing, shouting matches, attempted breaches of the partition. Each was documented, filed away, forgotten. No pattern analysis was conducted. No preventive measures were implemented. One former guard, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that staff had informal protocols for high-risk visits, couples known to have volatile relationships, inmates with histories of violence against partners. But these protocols were never formalized, never consistently applied. And no one had flagged this couple as high risk, despite his conviction for armed robbery and documented history of domestic violence. The investigation quickly uncovered what had triggered the attack. She had been living as her authentic self for over 2 years, had legally transitioned, had built a new life in Dallas where she was known and accepted. But in that visiting room, she'd maintained a facade, terrified of his reaction, trapped between her truth and his expectations. Friends came forward with stories that painted a picture of someone caught between 2 worlds. Her best friend testified that she'd begged her to stop visiting, to make a clean break. She said she couldn't abandon him, the friend recalled. She felt guilty, like she was betraying their marriage vows by becoming who she really was. Her therapist, bound by confidentiality while she was alive, was able to share notes after her death that revealed the depth of her struggle. Session after session documented her fear of telling him, her guilt over her transformation, her desperate hope that somehow, when he got out, he would understand and accept her. Text messages recovered from her phone showed she'd been building up courage to tell him. Draft after draft of letters explaining her transition, none ever sent. Google searches for how to tell your incarcerated partner you're transgender and prison visiting room safety in the weeks before her death. The bitter irony was that she'd planned to tell him that day. Friends revealed she'd decided she couldn't maintain the lie any longer. December 15th was supposed to be the day she finally lived her truth in every aspect of her life. Instead, it became the day that truth killed her. The trial began in March 2025. From the start, it was clear this would be more than a simple murder case. Prosecutors added hate crime charges, arguing that the killing was motivated by prejudice against her gender identity. The defense argued for temporary insanity, claiming the shock of discovery had caused an uncontrollable reaction. The security footage made most arguments moot. 12 jurors watched those 4 minutes and 37 seconds in silent horror. They saw the moment of recognition, the deliberate vault over the partition, the sustained nature of the attack. This wasn't a momentary loss of control, it was targeted, deliberate violence. Witnesses testified one after another. Other visitors described the horror of being trapped in the room as the attack unfolded, the sounds that would haunt them forever, the image of guards struggling to save someone who was already gone. Prison staff testified about the security failures, many breaking down as they acknowledged their role in the tragedy. But perhaps the most powerful testimony came from her sister. Speaking directly to him, she said, "She loved you enough to pretend to be someone she wasn't for 3 years. She loved you enough to drive 6 hours every Sunday to see you. She loved you more than she loved herself. And you killed her for it." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, life without the possibility of parole, to to be served consecutively with his existing sentence. He would die in prison just as she had. Her death sparked immediate changes. Within a month, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice implemented emergency protocols for all prison visiting rooms. Partitions were raised to 6 feet. Staffing levels were increased. Panic buttons were installed at every visitor station. Metal detectors were upgraded. Training on LGBTQ+ safety issues became mandatory for all staff. But policy changes couldn't bring her back. Her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the state, arguing that negligent security had enabled the murder. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, with the state admitting no wrongdoing but pledging continued reforms. More importantly, her death became a rallying cry for 2 overlapping causes: prison reform and transgender rights. Advocacy groups that had never worked together found common ground in preventing another tragedy like this. Her name became synonymous with the violence that transgender individuals face, particularly from intimate partners. Statistics paint a grim picture. Transgender individuals face intimate partner violence at rates 54% higher than the general population. When factors like incarceration, poverty, and lack of support systems are added, the risk skyrockets. Her death was shocking, but not surprising to those who work in domestic violence prevention. What changes do you think need to happen to prevent tragedies like this? How can we better protect vulnerable individuals in supposedly secure environments? Share your ideas below. Today, a small memorial stands outside the Dallas LGBTQ+ Center where she volunteered. It's a simple plaque with her chosen name, her real name, and the words, "Live your truth." Every Sunday, someone leaves fresh flowers, yellow roses, her favorite. Her friends established a foundation in her name that provides support for transgender individuals with incarcerated partners. They offer counseling, safety planning, and most importantly, the message that you don't have to choose between your truth and your safety. The visiting room at Huntsville has been completely redesigned. Where Partition 12 once stood, there's now a reinforced barrier that no amount of rage could breach. Some see it as a victory for security. Others see it as a monument to failure, a reminder that she died in a place that should have been safe, killed by someone who claimed to love her for the crime of being herself. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about love, identity, and the places where they collide. It asks us to examine our own biases, our own reactions to change, our own capacity for acceptance or violence. It demands that we do better, because in the end, this isn't just a story about one tragic December afternoon. It's about all the visiting rooms, all the difficult truths, all the people caught between who they are and who others expect them to be. It's about the price of authenticity in a world that often punishes difference. Her death was preventable at every level, from the societal attitudes that made her afraid to live openly, to the relationship dynamics that trapped her in cycles of fear, to the institutional failures that turned a secure facility into a killing ground. Each failure compounded the next until tragedy became inevitable. But if her story teaches us anything, it's that inevitable doesn't mean acceptable. Every policy changed, every barrier raised, every life saved because of lessons learned from her death is a small victory against inevitability. It's proof that we can do better, that we must do better. She made that 3-hour drive from Dallas to Huntsville over 150 times. Each Sunday, she chose love over safety, loyalty over logic, hope over reality. In the end, that choice killed her. But in her death, she finally achieved what she couldn't in life: the ability to be seen, remembered, and honored as who she truly was. The man who killed her will spend the rest of his life in a cell not far from that visiting room. He's refused all interview requests, all attempts at understanding. But understanding isn't the same as excusing. Some acts speak for themselves, tell their own truth about hatred and control, and the violence that erupts when someone dares to change. Her truth, the one she died revealing, lives on. In every person who finds the courage to transition despite the risks. In every policy changed to protect the vulnerable. In every conversation that shifts from judgment to acceptance. She didn't get to live her truth for very long, but maybe, just maybe, her death will help others live theirs. The visiting room at Huntsville sees hundreds of people every week. They sit across from loved ones separated by glass and circumstance, sharing fragments of their lives through telephone handsets. Most leave safely. All leave changed. And in the space where she died, where love became violence in 4 minutes and 37 seconds, there's now a camera that never blinks, a guard who never looks away, a barrier that can't be crossed. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's a start. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? How has it changed your perspective on identity, relationships, or safety? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, because her story doesn't end with her death. It continues in every conversation, every policy change, every moment when someone chooses acceptance over violence. It continues in you, in what you do with what you've learned, in how you treat those whose truths make you uncomfortable. She drove 3 hours each way, every Sunday for 3 years. That's over 900 hours on the road, 150 visits, countless moments of fear and hope and desperate love, all leading to 4 minutes and 37 seconds that changed everything. But those 4 minutes don't define her life. The 900 hours do. The courage to keep showing up does. The truth she finally spoke does. And in the end, that truth, that beautiful, dangerous, necessary truth, is what remains. Her name lives on. Her truth lives on. And somewhere, someone else is making that same drive, carrying that same secret, hoping for a different ending. For them, for all of them, we must do better. We must make sure that no one else dies for the crime of becoming themselves. The visiting room is safer now. But safety isn't just about higher barriers and more guards. It's about creating a world where truth isn't dangerous, where love doesn't demand disguise, where being yourself isn't a death sentence. That's her legacy. That's her challenge to us. That's the truth she died to tell. What will you do with it?